Hello there and welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Ungainly Titan. Welcome to a new series where I'm going to start talking about or giving advice and tips that I've learned over my 3 years of playing World of Tanks. This episode is focusing on stuff that I did wrong at the beginning. But first, a little history. My day job, so to speak, is caring for my mother. She has Alzheimer's, and about 3 years ago she needed a lot of care, a lot more than she does at the moment, because at that point in time she was still capable of standing up and falling out of her wheelchair, and including ripping the safety belts and stuff like that. And she would do so if you didn't watch her. She also was on a looped conversation that lasted about a half hour, and you had to answer her. She would insist on answers, and it was much easier just go along with her than to try and argue with. You can't argue with people with dementia. However, that meant I couldn't read books, couldn't watch movies. I also couldn't play shooter type games because she was still clued in enough in the world that she realised that there was violence going on in a shooter type game. People were dying, and she no longer realised that it was a fantasy. So this would actually upset her. She would get physically upset from shooter type games. But World of Tanks didn't elicit any comments, except about the quality of the land and the quality of the grass on Prokhorovka in particular elicited comments on several occasions. So World of Tanks, I thought, completely fitted the bill as far as I was concerned. Here was a game that lasted 10 to 15 minutes, probably 6-7 minutes on average, and I could sort of dip in and out of it as I needed, and stop it when I needed to stop it, and it was perfect. And then I was interested. I mean, there was a whole area, World War II tanks, that I had spent a long time studying and researching as a hobby, both as a war gamer and as a kind of a hobby historian, military historian type. So, World of Tanks, yeah, excellent, brilliant. And I started playing it, and I got addicted to the game. It really took over my life for a while. However, when I realised, shall we say, that I could do better in terms of my gameplay. It was probably about 6,000 games in, I started to become unhappy. The first thing that I was really unhappy with was the silver earning potential in the game. Now you've got to realise that at this point I was trying to grind out every tank in the game. So generally what would happen was I started with the British. So I started with the British, I hit tier 5, which I think was probably the Churchill one, because I have an extraordinary number of games which I will look up momentarily. But the Churchill one, and then the Churchill one grind, you see, was quite long because it was a tier 5. Before that, you were relatively small number of games, and you were up into another tier. So I'm now in the Churchill one, and I would be getting a little sick of the grind. So I'd look at the game, and I'd have, I don't know, 200,000 silver, and I would go and buy a lower tier tanks. So I started buying other British lower tier tanks, and then I'd get them up to about tier 5, and of course I'd run into the same problem. The grind would halt at tier 5 because I'd accumulate 100,000 silver or 200,000 silver and start again on another branch and another tech tree. This completely exacerbated my inability to accumulate silver, aside from the fact that I was spending it as fast as I was making it. The other problem is that I was reaching tier 5, generally reaching tier 5 without any skills. It is perfectly possible in World of Tanks, if you rush through, elite the tanks as fast as possible, that you will reach tier 5 in a tank without ever having achieved tank mastery in any of the intermediate tanks, much less actually learned a skill. So outlined in blue in this garage image, we have the tank mastery skill at 100% for the Edelweiss. This means that Carissa Consin is 100% mastery of her tank, and that any skill she has operates at full effect for whatever level of training the skill has, and that all experience is going to training in new skills. So when you buy a new tank in World of Tanks, you recruit a crew, and you have the option of recruiting a crew for real money, gold at 100%, tank mastery, or for silver at 75%, or for free at 50%. And if you transfer a crew from a tank to another tank that you're after purchasing, you will get the option of transferring again for gold at 100% or for silver at 75%. So it's very possible to reach tier 5 without ever having achieved tank mastery at any point along the line. If you're running a tank at less than 100% tank mastery, it means that your reload is going to be penalized. It's going to be longer than the base reload. Your aim time is going to be longer, your dispersion is going to be greater, so your actual damage output is going to be reduced. And this is without having acquired any skills, which would also improve your damage output. So if you are operating tanks at less than 100% mastery, your tank damage output, your potential damage output, is less than the baseline damage output of that tank, and therefore your silver earnings is directly proportional to your damage output, and that is also reduced. So don't drive tanks without tank mastery. Once you have elited a tank, tank experience, the crews actually get enhanced experience. That is, more of the experience earned past the elite stage is actually passed on to the crew than normally. So it is well worthwhile, if you have a tank that's elited without having the crew achieving 100% mastery, to actually continue playing with that tank until they have achieved full mastery, and furthermore to perhaps continue and earn a skill before moving on to the next tank. This will enhance your silver earning because you're learning the tank better. You're going to be better with the next tank at higher tier because you have more experience in the game. And finally, you are going to have skills on your crew, which is going to increase their potential in later matches. There are also ways of transferring crews to other tanks without losses, or with 100% mastery, without actually spending gold, which I'll go into in a moment. So the first lesson here, as far as I'm concerned, is that once you're past tier 3, really, I don't think it matters about tier 1 and 2. And I wouldn't go all dogmatic about tank mastery at tiers 1 and 2. But however, once you go from tier 3 onwards, I would not move a crew to another tank until they've achieved tank mastery in the current tank. And also I would attempt to learn skills, at least to a certain extent. I definitely wouldn't want to play a tier 5 tank without at least one skill, and preferably 2 skills, and I'd want to have at least 4 skills on my crews before I'd contemplate putting those crews on tier 8, but really the more skills the better. But I'm going to discuss skills in more depth in another episode. So how do you transfer a crew from one tank to another without losing tank mastery? Well, you have 2 choices. Well, actually there's 3 different ways, 3 different things you can do. One of them is you can pay for it in gold. You can pay real money to transfer a crew from your existing tank to your new tank, 100% skill mastery, by paying an amount of gold. This is moderately expensive and I wouldn't really recommend it. The other option is that you can transfer the crew to a new tank, and this is the home tank of the crew. So whatever tank a crew, whatever Tech 3 tank a crew is currently trained on, is considered to be their home tank or assigned to. Premium tanks are not considered to be home tanks. So you can transfer a crew from a premium tank, from a Tech 3 tank to a premium tank without any loss of skill mastery or without any change in the skill mastery numbers. So one advantage of having low tier, particularly tier 3 or tier 5 premium tanks, is that you could transfer a crew, take the hit in the skill mastery, then transfer them to, say, a tier 3 premium tank, and then play them in all your tier 3 or tier 5 premium tanks, get the daily doubles, and eventually the experience will count towards 100% mastery. And when they have 100% mastery achieved on these low tier tanks, you can then transfer them back to the tank that you had assigned to them as the new home tank. The advantage of this is that tanks without skill mastery at low tiers aren't as problematic to play. I mean, you're not losing as much potential as you are at very high tiers. At very high tiers, not having skill mastery can be hugely painful. because you're up against tanks with skill mastery, and not only that, but with large numbers of skills and equipment and experienced players and all sorts of things like that. The other possibility is to overtrain. Basically, when you have the opportunity of acquiring a new skill, you get the gold plus sign. You then continue to train without selecting a new skill for 25 to 30,000 experience, and then transfer to the new tank. The experience goes into skill mastery rather than into a new skill. We can see here that Carissa Compton has a skill available, and she's ready to train up a new skill. So if I decide, for instance, that I'm not going to train up the new skill, and if we go back onto the Nameless tank, we see that the Nameless has 68,193 experience. So if I train that up for another 30,000 experience, so say, whatever that be, 98,000, so 100,000 experience, then Carissa Compton could be transferred to another tank at 100% tank mastery, and she would have enough points left over to still have a new skill slot available for training on. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you for watching, and I will be back again soon with another episode. Thank you, bye.